Webster Griffin Tarply is an incisive critic of the Anglo-American hegemony, an activist, an historian, best known for his book, George Bush, The Unauthorized Biography. He's written several books on Obama, The Unauthorized Biography, tarply.net. We've got him on for the rest of the hour. We'll also get to a smattering of your calls on whatever issue they are. Mike, Mary, Tony, Richard, James, I'll get to you. Jerome Corsi coming up on the latest birther issues. We'll get Tarply's take on that as well. But Webster, you wrote this key article, U.S. and Pakistan near open war. You've had the U.S. helicopter attack inside Pakistan after the bin Laden thing last week. These al-Qaeda commandos attacking this base yesterday. We've got Pakistan openly in their major papers saying, yes, al-Qaeda is CIA-run now. Pakistan's running to China and Russia. Hamid Gul's come on, the former head of Pakistani intelligence, basically concurred with what you're saying here. Any attack on Pakistan will be construed as an attack on China. The Chinese government has now said. This is what you talked about 6 months ago on this show, as where you saw the next flare-up happening in the Brzezinski model. Dr. Tarply, we're going to break in 4 minutes. You've got the floor. Break down what's happening.
Well, thank you, Alex. I guess the current situation is the following. The U.S. and Pakistan are moving towards an open shooting war. There has long been a latent war, a war going on at a very low level, but this is now escalating towards something much bigger and more visible, and it has to do with this insistence of Obama and his man on the scene now, Grossman, the guy who replaced Holbrooke, the regional envoy, that they can violate the Pakistani border anytime they want to without consulting or even informing the Pakistani government. They can make these unauthorized raids, all on the model of this bin Laden stunt, which I guess we've amply established now as a complete fraud from beginning to end. So the big news, though, is that Pakistan does not stand alone, and that behind Pakistan, which is already a nuclear power, you've got China. And with China, you're talking about intercontinental ballistic missiles with hydrogen bomb warheads. You're also talking about $2 to $3 trillion worth of U.S. securities that could be used as a strategic weapon in its own right if things got really, really extreme. The news is, according to the Times of India, that the Chinese have issued this ultimatum. They did it in a typical low-key, rather polite Chinese way. It was done privately. It was done during the U.S.-Chinese strategic dialogue here in Washington 2 weeks ago. Would have been delivered by Vice Prime Minister Wang Qishan, and it essentially was the Chinese saying to the United States, any attack by the United States on Pakistan would be construed as an attack on China. So if you attack Pakistan, you're attacking China. You quarrel with Islamabad, you got grief with Beijing. And that is a language of ultimatum that we have not heard. The last time I can find that anybody issued an ultimatum to the United States was Khrushchev in 1961, the Soviet leader during the Cuban Missile Crisis and during the Berlin Crisis, which was when this was. The ultimatum was get out of Berlin in 6 months or else something. This is much more specific. It's quite unusual for the U.S. to be on the receiving end. In public and officially, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said last Thursday that everyone must, and that's must, respect the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Pakistan. So don't attack them and don't try to break them up. And break them up is what the United States is doing. As a token of the seriousness of the China-Pakistan alliance, when the Pakistani Prime Minister Gilani visited Beijing last week, he was given a rather imposing gift. He was given 50, that's 50, of the most modern Chinese jet fighter aircraft. This is the JF-17, and he was given 50 of them for free and right away. So essentially enough to staff a whole air fleet.
This is an ultra-gigantic escalation. We're going to come back, Webster. You will continue to have the floor to break down with the precision that only you can deliver, and I mean that because Webster 6 months ago laid all this out, exactly how it would unfold, the color revolutions in the Middle East. I mean, go back and watch those shows. Listen to those shows. They're all archived at prisonplanet.tv. Nobody's got a grasp on the geopolitical machinations of the New World Order like Dr. Tarply, Doctor of History. He's also an economist. I'm Alex Jones. This is the GCN Radio Network, GCNlive.com. Stay with us. Okay, Webster Griffin Tarply. China Their government, as you mentioned, this week and last week, put out official statements. Quote, an attack on Pakistan will be construed as an attack on China. China made good, even when they didn't have nuclear weapons during the Korean War, to ready to have war, full war with the U.S. They were in North Korea, killed tens of thousands of our troops. China is well known by every geopolitical strategist. I want to see if you agree that if they tell you that they're going to do something, they will do it. And they are not to be messed with, and they see this in their sphere of influence. What does this signify that we have these cold wars that are really hot under the name of humanitarian bombings in Libya, Pakistan? The Pakistanis now, in their major papers, and the head of their Pakistani intelligence, the current head coming out and saying, yes, the bin Laden thing is meant to frame us. Yes, the West is running al-Qaeda inside here to try to blame it on our government to start a war. I mean, I don't think folks understand. This isn't Iraq or even Iran. This is a nuclear power that fought India with 3-to-1 superiority to a standstill. These people will fight, are highly motivated. Tarply.
I think it's an example of the use of irregular warfare, guerrilla warfare, or terrorism beneath the nuclear threshold. The problem the imperialists who run this country have always had with Pakistan is that they can't attack Pakistan directly because, as you say, it's a nuclear power. You can't have a direct military attack. They can respond. So what you've got to do is this subversion, terrorism, guerrilla warfare, irregular warfare. Below the nuclear threshold, they think, but of course the problem is that it always threatens to jump up above the nuclear threshold. It's also worth remembering the way the United States got in there was by an ultimatum to Pakistan. This was in September, October 2001, right after 9/11. Bush called up the president of Pakistan at the time, Musharraf, and said, guess what? If you don't let us use your country for transit into Afghanistan, we will bomb you. And Musharraf said, okay, fine, you can come in. The U.S. was not invited. They basically invaded Pakistan at that time as well as Afghanistan. So what you've got now is a pattern where the U.S., according to the British press, the United States, the CIA, plus the Indians, the RAW, the RAW, the Research and Analysis Wing, plus the Mossad, have created their own fake counter-gang Taliban inside Pakistan. So it's something that looks like the Taliban. It sounds...
And by the way, at the Mumbai attack, 3 years ago, it later came out in the Chicago Tribune, even mainstream papers, that it was true. A CIA operative commanded the so-called people attacking, and the only patsy they grabbed, this was in AP, was on 3 different hallucinogens and didn't know who he was. And the head of Indian intelligence said that the West did it, but then he was killed that same day. So that was a black op.
Yes, and that guy, David Headley, has just been on CBS Evening News last night. He's testifying at a trial where he goes through this whole spiel. The Pakistanis did it, the ISI did it, and this is a DEA, CIA agent, informant, whatever he is, telling you all these things. It's crazy. But the Taliban counter gang, now what do they do? You have to look at the pattern of terrorism inside Pakistan is dictated by a military agenda. For example, they kill a Saudi diplomat. When you kill a Saudi diplomat in Pakistan, you're attacking that Saudi-Pakistan axis that was set up by Prince Bandar during his visit to Pakistan at the end of March. They set up this mutual assistance pact, basically. If the U.S. tries to overthrow the Saudi royal family with a color revolution or a putsch, the Pakistanis will send a division of troops to put down the color rebellion. And the other thing is, if the United States threatens the Saudis and says, here, do what we say, or we will feed you to the Iranians, at that point, the Saudis can invoke the Pakistani nuclear umbrella. So this is one of the reasons the United States is so eager to get these Pakistani nukes either destroyed or else seized by the U.S. So if you go after a diplomat, you're attacking that axis. Here, the big one, just in the last couple of days, after I wrote this article, there's a big attack on the Faisal Air Force Base in South Pakistan, near the ocean.
Now, that happened yesterday. Stay there. We're going to come back and break down what happened there. Also, the Chinese giving them the 50 high-tech aircraft. What you expect the global engineers to do next, and how their destabilization program's going in Libya. The announcement has now been made. We'll tell you about that coming up.
This is sort of in the north central part of the country, not so far from Abbottabad, where the pseudo bin Laden was supposedly finished off. But the 80 nuclear missiles are there, plus the F-16s that can carry nuclear bombs. So the entire plan revolves around a raid, right? A lightning commando attack, an assault with SEALs and so forth on this nuclear complex. And the idea is then go in quickly and disable the Pakistani nuclear weapons. The British say through the Sunday Express that they're also part of it. So it would be a joint U.S.-British raid into Pakistan to try to seize and destroy these nuclear forces. Now, that would mean that Pakistan would become relatively defenseless against an attack by India. In the background, this whole time in May, there has been a special drill going on of one of the three Indian assault armies, and it's a blitzkrieg drill, nuclear, bacteriological, and chemical, that's going on in the Thar Desert. This is an area called North Rajasthan, and I'm afraid you're going to have to get as familiar with the geography of Pakistan and India as we've gotten with Iraq over the years. So this is a drill that would be designed to cut Pakistan in half in case of war. And if the Pakistanis don't have nuclear forces, they can't defend themselves. That seems to be what all of this revolves around.
And so right as he arrives, the plant blows up. An explosion blamed on gas leak. But Bush in 2008 put out a press release, or 2007, admitting that they've got groups and special forces inside there doing this. I mean, that's policy. And an explosion blamed on a gas leak rocked Iran's largest refinery on Tuesday around the time of a visit to the plant by President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Iranian media reported that up to 2 people were killed. The blast occurred just before Ahmadinejad was to inaugurate an expansion project of the 400,000 barrel per day. And notice they've just signed a deal, Iran did, with Iraq for this natural gas. And no, you're not. It's going to blow up, and we'll do it while Ahmadinejad's there. You dovetail that. I mean, this is this soft kill, low-intensity warfare, unconventional commando-type stuff, where they're really trying to start World War III right now. That is the banks that have hijacked this country. Libya, British attack helicopters to be deployed, seen as the next step to ground invasion. EU lines up resolution to start ground invasion that they promised they wouldn't do. NATO hits Tripoli. U.S. says rebels can open office. Bombing begins of their shipyards. Eight warships sunk 2 days ago. I mean, this is going into high gear. Webster, I mean, are they launching some type of? I mean, this is scary.
I think it shows that the U.S. British ruling elite has gone collectively insane, and that they're in a war psychosis. They're also in an austerity psychosis. They're obsessed with the idea that the dollar and all of their derivatives are going down the drain, and they're in a flight forward. So this is a time of tremendous irrationality. The problem we have is that the general public remains unaware of most of these very, very shocking and very, very disturbing and scary events, primarily because the entire left opposition, so-called peace movement and related people, foundation-funded in particular, have essentially given up on opposing Obama.
They're not opposing; they're cheerleading the wars. But Webster, I mean, let's back off from this for a moment. Look. Clearly, it's the old thing of ramming the Branch Davidian compound, saying, come out, we're your friends, and the Davidians run out, and the flare footage shows the special forces shooting them, or you watch a Hollywood movie like Mars Attacks, which is a joke on the Pentagon, an archetype with the aliens running around saying, don't run, we're your friends, and the humans come out of their houses, and the aliens laugh and shoot them. Obama comes out and says, we're your friends, Israel, give back the land to the Palestinians. And then a day later says, look, it was all just a psyop. They're saying, don't run, we are your friends. Netanyahu's smiling about all this. It's total theater as they launch the disintegration of the Middle East. I mean, this is hellish what they're doing.